What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Bryce, and today we're reading chapter 51 of the Parker Inheritance. Let's begin. Chapter 51. 3 months after discovering Parker's safety deposit box, Candace returned to Lambert. The city had decided to issue a formal apology to her grandmother, and were holding a ceremony to rename City Hall in her honor. It was a nice gesture, but Candace didn't care much about having her grandmother's name on the building. She would just rather have her grandma back. Facts. It was funny, as much as Candace hated what people had said about her grandmother, she was sometimes glad she had been fired. If she had remained in Lambert, Candace would have never grown as close to her as she did. Her grandmother's failure led to Candace spending so much time with her. A small crowd had already formed in front of a podium and stage outside City Hall by the time they reached downtown. The woman organizing the event saw Candace and her mother as they walked up and quickly rushed them over to the stage. As Candace took her seat, she spotted Brandon and his family at the front of the crowd. She quickly waved and mouthed that she'd meet him right afterward. They had been emailing every day, but she hadn't seen him in months. The program began with the current mayor telling a very long and very boring story about her grandmother's bravery and ingenuity. It quickly became clear to Candace that he never met Abigail Caldwell. The program would have been much more interesting if the former mayor, the one who had fired her, had been the one to give the speech. Likewise, she hoped that Milo and his mother were somewhere in the audience, as well as William Maynard. She didn't want vengeance, but a little justice would be nice. She also wondered if James Parker was there. She wanted to give him Siobhan's bracelet. As much as she loved it, she felt that its rightful place was with him. The ceremony ended with Candace and her mother unveiling a plaque that had been fastened to the red brick outside City Hall. In addition to a small biography of her grandmother, Candace and her mother had decided to include one of her grandmother's favorite quotes. Just because you don't see the path doesn't mean it's not there. Afterward, Candace was swarmed by a group of people wanting to know what she'd done with her share of the money. She answered the questions as politely as she could, then slipped off to find Brandon. "It was so great to see you," she said, hugging him. He seemed to have grown taller. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said after pulling back. He pointed toward the boy standing far off from the crowd. He waved when he saw them looking at him. "Quincy?" she asked. Brandon nodded. "Don't tell him I said this, but he's a little jealous of you. He goes off for the summer, and I have this great adventure without him." "It wouldn't have been so great if we hadn't found the money," Candace said, laughing. He tilted his head. "No, but it still would have been pretty awesome, right?" Candace nodded. "Yeah, you're right." They started walking toward Quincy. "Want to get lunch afterward? Maybe Sam's or Candace Miller?" She stopped and turned. An older man approached them, a small smile on his face. But instead of golden skin, his fingers were dark. Instead of gray eyes, his irises were as brown as Candace. His irises were brown as Candace's. "I'm Odell Davis," he said, stretching his hand to her. "I used to work with your grandmother." Candace quickly shook his hand, then Brandon did. "Thank you for coming out," she said. "Grandma really loved working here." "She sure did. She was a good boss too," Odell said. "A lot of us could have lost our jobs over excavating the park. But she protected us all. Every man out there that night kept his job thanks to her." Candace blinked. "Wait, you were there on the night she dug up the tennis court? The bench too, though no one seems to remember that." He grinned. "But to be fair, that hole was a bit small. But underneath the tennis court," he whistled, "sometimes I think Miss Caldwell would have had us digging all the way to the other side of the world if the mayor hadn't stopped us." Candace looked down at the bracelet on her arm. "Do you know why she never said anything about a bracelet?" Odell frowned. Come again? The bracelet. She slipped it off and handed it to him. Didn't you find this underneath the tennis courts that night? He slowly shook his head. Candace, that hole was as empty as a pool in the desert. There was nothing there. Certainly not this. Now Brennan was frowning. Are you sure? Maybe she found it and didn't say anything. Odell shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. I was there all night, and I was chief of the crew. He returned the bracelet. If someone had found something, I would have known. Then he nodded. I just wanted to pay my respects. Your grandmother was a wonderful woman. You did her proud. Candace watched the man walk off, but she turned to Brennan. My head is exploding right now. We're sure that bracelet is Siobhan's, right? Yeah, I think so. And your grandmother never met her, did she? How could she? When would she? Candace rubbed her eyes. None of this makes any sense. Brandon pulled Candace's hands away from her face. Come on, let me introduce you to Quincy. We can talk about this later. Over chili cheese dogs. Candace looked at the bracelet once more, touching the scratches on the surface, wondering what secrets it held. Then she slipped it back on the wrist and followed Brandon through the crowd. The mystery of the bracelet would remain unsolved. And that is chapter 51. So tomorrow I'll be finishing up the book. We're reading chapter 52. And that's about it. Peace out.